they are spending, because those Fox News polls that we have show that more than half of voters say their personal financial situation is not good. So let's bring in Kevin Hassett, former chairman of the White House Economic Advisors. Kevin, it's great to have you on the program. I want to get your sense of what's happening here. You've got a stock market that continues to go higher, and it's recouped the gains from the sell-off that we saw last week. You've got mixed data on the consumer. I will still call it that. But then ultimately, you've got people still saying, I don't feel good about this. It doesn't feel good for me at home. So how do you make sense of it?
Well, sure. First, the retail sales number today was really surprisingly high, and we're getting whipsawed around with data. The jobs data suggests that we're in recession. The consumer spending data suggests that we're in a boom, and the markets have been gyrating, I think, appropriately given the really crazy news that we're seeing. And so I think that what is going on with consumer sentiment that you don't see in the retail sales data, for example, which are really strong because people are buying cars, is that doesn't include the interest rate. And so people who are buying cars and then they have to make a monthly payment and they're borrowing to do so, they're paying really high interest rate. The average interest rate on credit cards, for example, right now is 24%. And so there's a borrowing binge and a spending binge right now, but it could come back to haunt folks. And again, I'm expecting that the next jobs number is going to be as bad as the last one, and then the markets are going to have to recover from this boom right now.
It's interesting. We've been talking a lot about the cause of the inflation problem. Kamala Harris going to be the latest today, blaming corporations, evil, greedy, bad corporations on price gouging. And yet it's interesting. I was taking a look at some of the profit margins back in 2023. Profit margins within the grocery industry were just 1.6%. That is the lowest since 2019, when they were a mere 1%. These companies basically aren't making money. How do you think about an economy with an administration blaming corporations instead of tackling the root of inflation?
Right. Well, they're in denial, and they've been in denial since they told us it was transitory and it was supply disruptions. And one of the ways that we could make your point, too, is you can think about there's some industries where people have no pricing power whatsoever. So like if you're growing apples, then you take the price of apples when you sell it to the wholesale distributor. And then there are other things like Google, where they've got a huge amount of market power. And so the point is just that across everything, prices went up. And the reason that happened is that the government spent money like crazy, and the Fed printed money to let that happen. And so when the government does that, we get inflation. And it's something that we all learned in our first economics class. And it's kind of stunning that the Biden administration has been in denial about it the whole time. And so she should have started day one on this. And I don't have any faith that she would, if elected, start the next day one.
Kevin, your old boss had some pretty dire predictions if Kamala Harris ends up as president. Listen to this.
If Harris wins this election, the result will be a Kamala economic crash, a 1929-style depression. 1929. When I win the election, we will immediately begin a brand new Trump economic boom. It'll be a boom. We're going to turn this country around so fast.
What do you make of that? Are we talking 1929 if she's in office?
If you look at all the things that she says that she supports, like a guaranteed job for everybody, she's opposed to fracking. And it's even, if you look at the way the campaign pulled that back, they said, well, she's not opposed to all fracking, right? Like, so in other words, yes, she's opposed to fracking. And so she's got a whole bunch of things that she's advocated in the past, which collectively would do exactly what the president's saying. I guess the question is, she's backing away from that. She's recruited a bunch of advisors that have been advising previous presidents like Gene Sperling and so on. And so maybe she's going to try to run to the middle on policy in the election. But my guess is that a lot of the things she said in the past about what she really wants to do, like the Green New Deal, for example, getting carbon neutral by 2030, all that kind of stuff would cause a deep recession. Carbon neutral by 2030 is almost impossible. 75% of our electricity comes from burning fossil fuels. So how are they going to do that? If they try it, then you're just going to have to shut down the economy.
The great Maya Angelou once said, when people show you who they are, believe them. Kevin, before we let you go, I've heard in certain circles your name has been floated for Fed chair if President Trump were to win the White House once again. But that's not really what I want to ask you about. I'm more curious about your interpretation of some of the policy ideas he's put out there with respect to the evolution of the Fed and how the Fed should work with the executive branch. Do you think that it is time for a more modernized version of how things work?
Well, I think that the academic literature supports the idea of Federal Reserve independence. And I think the frustration that President Trump has, I know I've spoken with him about this, is that the Fed really hasn't appeared to be politically independent over the last 8 years. If you go back and look, after he was elected, before he was inaugurated, with inflation at 1.8%, the Fed started tightening. Right, and the Fed chair that did that, Janet Yellen, is now out there actually doing political rallies, probably in violation of the Hatch Act, for Kamala Harris. And so he feels like the Fed became partisan, and he wants to fix that. And I think if people that think like him and that understand the importance of Fed independence, but also not just being knee-jerk Keynesians and supporting whatever Democratic policies come up, that I think that he'd be fine with independence. But he's not really, I think, in a position where he trusts the current Fed. And last thought about this, remember at the start of the year, even though the economy was doing okay and inflation was around 4%, the markets were saying the Fed was going to cut 6 times. And so the markets have thought all year that the Fed is going to juice the economy up ahead of the election for Biden and Harris. And so yeah, I think the president's suspicious of what the Fed's been doing. And if you look at the history, you could see why he would be.
Kevin, always great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good to see you again.